The stars of the Orion sector were calm, shining like cold diamonds across the endless dark. Against this beauty drifted the Mercy Dawn, a massive white ship marked with the clear red insignia of humanity's medical corps. It was a hospital ship, not a warship. Its hull was covered with glowing panels broadcasting its neutral status in dozens of alien languages. For centuries, the rules of war had been simple. You never touched a medical vessel. The Mercy Dawn was more than just a ship. It was a promise. Wherever lives were lost, wherever colonies burned, wherever soldiers bled, humanity sent ships like this. Inside were doctors, nurses, engineers, and volunteers from many races. Some were human, some alien, but all carried the same mission: to heal without judgment. Captain Leora Ansel stood on the bridge, watching the stars slide by. Her uniform was plain white, her voice calm. "Status report?" she asked. "All systems nominal," replied her first officer. "We're 3 hours from the Crixall border world. The distress calls are still active. Their colonies are in bad shape after the civil skirmishes." Leora nodded. She knew what awaited them. Burned villages, shattered cities, children crying, for parents that would never return. She had seen it all before, yet every time she believed in her duty. If humanity had one gift to give the galaxy, it was compassion. Far away, in another system, Admiral Elias Rain listened to the same reports. He was not on the Mercy Dawn. Instead, he commanded a distant station too far to intervene directly, but he had family aboard. His younger sister, Mara Rain, was one of the lead surgeons on the Mercy Dawn. She had dedicated her life to medicine, while he had dedicated his to war. "You always save," she had once teased him, "but you save by breaking. I save by mending." He had laughed at that, though a shadow crossed his heart whenever he thought about how fragile her work was compared to his fleet's. The Mercy Dawn entered Crixall space under a clear signal of neutrality. Messages were broadcast. "Medical relief ship entering. We carry no weapons. We bring aid." For a brief moment, silence answered. Then the stars lit with fire. 3 Crixall warships appeared, cutting across the void like predators. Their hulls were jagged and cruel, black against the starlight. Their weapons powered up, glowing with deadly intent. On the bridge, Captain Leora's voice hardened. "Signal again. We are a hospital ship. We do not carry weapons. We are here to provide aid." The Crixall commander's voice came back, sharp and mocking. "Weak creatures. You think your mercy gives you protection? You think compassion has power? We spit on your laws." Without warning, the first volley struck. The Mercy Dawn's shields were light, meant only to guard against asteroids or storms, never against warship cannons. The blast tore through its hull. Alarm screamed. Crew were thrown from their seats as fire ripped through the decks. Doctors and nurses rushed to secure patients. Volunteers dragged the wounded into safer chambers. But the Crixall were not finished. Again and again they fired, laughing over the comms. "Burn their kindness, let them learn what strength truly means." The escort ships, small corvettes carrying only defensive arms, tried to shield the Mercy Dawn. They were cut down in minutes, exploding into silent blossoms of fire. Inside the ship, chaos ruled. Mara Rain sprinted down a smoke-filled corridor, pulling a young alien child to safety. The floor shook beneath her. "Keep moving," she shouted, as nurses dragged stretchers past her. She coughed, choking on ash. She thought of her brother Elias so far away and prayed she might see him again. But prayers are not always answered. A final shot struck the reactor. The explosion was silent in space, but thunderous inside. Light devoured the corridors. The Mercy Dawn, ship of hope, ship of mercy, was torn apart into 1,000 fragments. All across human space, the signal went dark. News of the slaughter reached Earth within hours. Broadcasts spread like wildfire. Images of the destroyed ship intercepted Crixall laughter, the screams of patients cut off mid-cry. Billions wept. Billions raged. Humanity had seen war before. But this was different. This was not an attack on a fleet or a colony. It was an attack on the very idea of mercy. At the Galactic Council, alien leaders trembled. Some condemned the Krixall openly. Others remained silent, afraid of their wrath. Yet whispers spread through the halls. If they could do this to the humans, they could do it to anyone. On a quiet station orbiting Titan, Admiral Elias Rain stood alone in his quarters, the transmission replaying over and over. His sister's face smiled from an old holo photo on his desk. Her voice echoed in his memory. "You break to save. I mend to save." His hands clenched behind his back. He did not weep. He did not scream. He only stared at the stars beyond, his window. When his aide entered, the young officer hesitated. "Sir, the council is calling for sanctions. Some even suggest negotiations." Rain turned slowly, his eyes cold as iron. "Negotiations?" "Yes, sir. They believe escalation will cost too much. They hope diplomacy." "Diplomacy?" Rain's voice cut like a blade. "They slaughtered doctors. They murdered the helpless. They burned a ship of mercy." The aide swallowed, then spoke carefully. "What shall we do, Admiral?" Rain's jaw tightened. In that moment, something inside him shifted. He had fought wars before, commanded fleets, faced enemies, across battle lines. But this was different, this was personal. This was a wound not to him alone, but to all of humanity. He turned back to the stars, his voice low but sharp. "We show them what humanity truly is." The aide frowned. "And what is that, sir?" Admiral Rain's eyes blazed with quiet fire. "We are kind, but we are not weak. They wanted to mock mercy? Then let them choke on fear. They attacked a ship of healers. I will make them learn what it means to face a human who builds war from nothing." Outside the viewport, the stars glittered, cold and silent. Somewhere in that endless night, the Krixall celebrated their victory. They believed humanity would bow, or beg, or compromise. They were wrong, because Elias Rain had already begun to plan. And when he planned, empires burned. The galaxy mourned, but Admiral Elias Rain did not. He had no time for tears. The destruction of the Mercy Dawn had shaken human space to its core. News broadcasts repeated the same images. Fragments of the hospital ship drifting in silence. Survivors' signals lost, and intercepted Krixall laughter that echoed like poison across every channel. Billions of humans grieved for the dead, but grief quickly turned into anger. On Earth, citizens filled the streets with candles and banners. On Mars, miners stopped their work and demanded vengeance. Across the colonies, volunteers lined up, asking to join the fleet. Yet while humanity raged, the Galactic Council argued. In the Great Chamber, representatives of hundreds of species debated endlessly. "The Krixall must be punished," one alien shouted. "Punishment will bring more war," another countered. "We cannot risk escalation. We must negotiate." And so the debate dragged on, filled with hesitation, excuses, and fear. But Elias Rain did not sit in that chamber. He was not a politician. He was a strategist, a man whose mind turned war into mathematics. And as the council argued, Rain worked in silence. Admiral Rain sat in his office aboard the Titan command station. A large screen displayed maps of the Krixall Dominion. Bright red lines showed their fleets, trade routes, colonies, and supply chains. His staff officers stood nervously behind him, watching as he drew invisible paths with his finger across the star map. "They are strong in open battle," Rain said quietly. "Their warships are numerous and their soldiers loyal to fear. But empires like the Krixall do not fall from the outside. They rot from within." He tapped one glowing line. "This is their supply chain. They rely on food shipments from 3 agricultural worlds. Without them, their fleets starve." He moved his hand again. "This is their iron supply. Only 2 systems provide enough to build their weapons. Remove those, and their shipyards go silent." He traced one more path. "Here." Here is their arrogance. They rule many alien species, but they keep them under control only by fear. Give those people weapons, give them hope, and the Krixall will burn themselves down. The officers exchanged uneasy glances. One finally asked, "Sir, are you suggesting a full war?" Rain turned slowly, his eyes sharp. "No, war is what they expect. I suggest something else. A shadow war, a campaign not of conquest, but of collapse." The room fell silent. "Every empire has its weakness," Rain continued. "The Krixall believe power is cruelty. They cannot imagine kindness as strength. That is their blindness, and I will use it against them." He looked back at the map, his voice like iron. "I will not fight them with fleets. I will fight them with hunger, with rebellion, with fear. I will make them believe death waits in every shadow. And when their empire finally crumbles, they will remember why it began." His officers stood straighter. Some felt fear at the scope of his words. Others felt awe. But none doubted him. Elias Rain was known as the architect of wars, a man who had never lost a campaign. And now he was building the deadliest one yet. Days later, in a hidden hangar beneath the icy crust of Europa, a small fleet assembled. It was not a grand armada like those the Council loved to display. Instead, it was lean, fast, and secret. These ships were painted black, their engines muted, their weapons hidden. They carried elite crews, intelligence officers, hackers, spies, and Marines trained for operations deep inside enemy space. This was Task Force Retribution. Its mission was not victory in battle, but victory in silence. Strike where the enemy least expected. Vanish before they could respond. Spread chaos, terror, and rebellion. Rain walked through the hangar, inspecting the crews. Men and women stood tall in dark uniforms, their faces hard with determination. Some were soldiers. Some were engineers. Some were simple volunteers who had lost family on the Mercy Dawn. He stopped before them and spoke. His voice was calm, but it carried to every ear. "The Krixall believe they destroyed us when they destroyed the Mercy Dawn. They believe compassion is weakness. They believe humanity will bow. They are wrong. You are the proof." He let the words hang, then continued. "We will not meet them in open war. We will not waste lives in battles that do not matter. Instead, we will strike their hearts. We will cut their veins. We will remind them that mercy is not weakness. It is the one strength they can never understand. And when their empire burns, it will not be because of fleets or weapons. It will be because they underestimated humanity." The crews saluted, some with tears in their eyes, others with grim smiles. They believed. Task Force Retribution was born. But Rain knew war was not only fought with ships, it was fought with information. In a hidden chamber aboard his flagship, Rain met with his intelligence officers. Screens lit up with intercepted Krixall communications, stolen reports, and maps of their colonies. "Begin the broadcasts," Rain ordered. Within days, strange signals began spreading across the Krixall dominion. At first, they seemed harmless. Ghost transmissions, static with faint whispers. But soon, images appeared. Grainy recordings of the Mercy Dawn being destroyed, the screams of its dying passengers, the laughter of the Krixall commanders. These images reached not just humans, but also the alien races enslaved under Krixall rule. They watched horrified as proof of the Empire's cruelty filled their screens. Many had lived under Krixall oppression for years, but now they saw they were not alone in their suffering. Some whispered, "If the humans fight back, maybe we can." Too, Rain's plan was working. Seeds of rebellion had been planted. Meanwhile, the Krixall High Command noticed the disturbances. Their admirals met in towering halls carved from black stone, their voices filled with anger. "These humans are spreading lies," one general snarled. "Lies?" another growled. "No, the recordings are true. We destroyed their hospital ship, and now they spread it across our empire like a disease." The Krixall Emperor, a massive creature draped in golden armor, slammed his fist on the table. "Let them try. We are the Krixall Dominion. We rule by strength. No human tricks can break us. But though his words were bold, doubt stirred among his commanders. Already, food shortages had begun in some colonies. Already, minor revolts were sparking on distant worlds. And already whispers of Elias Rain reached even the ears of Crixall soldiers. They began to fear him. They called him the Shadow Admiral. Back on Titan Station, Rain stood again before his star map. He watched as reports came in, supply lines disrupted, rebellions growing, Crixall fleets chasing shadows and finding nothing. His aide entered quietly. "Sir, the Council demands updates. They still debate whether your actions are authorized." Rain did not look away from the map. "Tell them this. Authorization does not win wars. Results do." The aide hesitated. "And what of the Crixall, sir? Do you believe they understand what you are doing to them?" Rain allowed himself the faintest smile. "Not yet. They still believe they are strong. But soon they will realize they are bleeding from every vein. And when they finally understand, it will be too late." He straightened, his eyes cold and sharp as the stars. "They killed my sister. They burned the Mercy Dawn. They mocked our compassion. Now I will show them the cost of their arrogance. I will not simply defeat them. I will make them watch as their empire falls apart from within. That will be my justice." And so the stage was set. The galaxy still argued. The Council still hesitated. The Crixall still believed themselves untouchable. But in the shadows of the stars, a new kind of war had begun. A war not fought with armies but with ideas, sabotage, rebellion, and fear. At its center stood one man, Admiral Elias Rain, the mastermind who would turn mercy into a weapon and vengeance into fire. The Crixall had attacked a hospital ship. They had laughed at human kindness. They would not be laughing much longer. The Crixall dominion stretched across hundreds of star systems. To most, it looked like a fortress too strong to fall. Its fleets numbered in the thousands, its armies were vast, and its worlds were bound together by fear. Yet Admiral Elias Rain knew the truth. Even the largest empire could bleed if its veins were cut, and so Task Force Retribution moved into the shadows. The first cut-in. The darkness of an asteroid field near the Karthus Belt, a convoy of Crixall freighters drifted. They were heavy with supplies, food, medicine, and fuel, destined for frontline fleets. The freighters were guarded by 2 warships, their commanders arrogant and careless. After all, who would dare attack Crixall ships in their own territory? But the darkness hid hunters. From the shadow of a rock, a black human cruiser powered up. Its engines whispered, almost silent. With precise timing, it launched small pods that latched onto the freighters like insects. Seconds later, explosions tore through the convoy's engines. "Strike successful," reported Lieutenant Kira on Rain's flagship. "The freighters are disabled. No casualties among civilians." Rain's voice was calm. "Good. Transfer the supplies to our hold. The food will go to the rebels. Burn the rest." Moments later, the entire convoy lit up in fire. Their cargo turned to ash. The escort ships tried to respond, but hidden mines detonated beneath their hulls. They never stood a chance. In less than 20 minutes, a vital supply line of the Crixall Dominion was gone. The Crixall admirals called it a coward strike. Rain called it the first cut. Whispers of rebellion. On the planet Velarin, the streets had long been silent under Crixall rule. The native Velarans were a gentle people, farmers and artisans, now forced into slavery. Their overseers carried whips of energy and spoke only in threats. For years the Velarans obeyed, too afraid to resist. But one night a strange broadcast appeared on their networks. It showed the Mercy Dawn, burning in space, with the screams of dying healers. Then came the voice of a human woman. "They killed the ones who came to heal. They mocked compassion. Do you think they will ever show mercy to you?" The Velarans gathered in secret halls whispering. For the first time, fear turned to anger. Then crates appeared in the hills beyond the cities. Crates dropped by human stealth ships. Inside were weapons, food, and small transmitters. Written. On each crate was a simple message: "You are not alone, rise." That night, the first rebellion began. Velaran slaves struck down their overseers. Fires lit the skies. The Crixel garrisons scrambled to respond, but every time they tried, another city rose in defiance. And everywhere, the rebels carried the same symbol, the red cross of the Mercy Dawn. The second cut rain's strikes grew bolder. In the Drix's system, a Crixol refinery that supplied half the Dominion's fuel was destroyed in a single raid. In the Kitharis fields, entire fleets starved when their food convoys vanished. Each time the attacks came without warning. Sometimes it was a hidden minefield. Sometimes a group of rebels who had been armed in secret. Sometimes human hackers, who shut down an entire defense grid before a single shot was fired. The Crixol commanders raged. They launched fleet after fleet, but their enemies were ghosts. By the time they arrived, the humans were gone, leaving only fire and whispers behind. "They are not fighting us with strength," one general growled in frustration. "They are fighting us with shadows." And the shadows were winning. The broadcasts. A fear as the strikes continued, so did the broadcasts. Rain's intelligence teams hacked into Crixol networks, sending messages across the Empire. One night, soldiers on a Crixol world woke to find every screen in their barracks glowing with the same image: Elias Rain standing tall in his dark uniform. "You destroyed a ship of mercy," his voice echoed. "Now you will learn the price." The message spread across cities, colonies, and stations. Even children heard it. For the first time, the Crixol felt fear, not from outside enemies, but from within their own empire. Soldiers muttered that Rain knew their every move. Citizens whispered his name like a ghost story: the Shadow Admiral, the man who could strike anywhere, anytime. Fear was spreading faster than any fleet. The third cut, the most daring strike, came against the Crixol shipyards at Draven. These yards built their warships, massive factories floating in orbit around a dying star. They were considered untouchable, guarded by dozens of cruisers, but Rain was not planning to fight the guards. He was planning to turn the yards against themselves. A team of human infiltrators disguised as laborers slipped into the factories. With small devices, they infected the shipyard systems. For weeks, nothing seemed to happen. Then one morning, the entire station's reactors overloaded. Flames burst from the shipyards as half-completed warships exploded in their docks. The blast spread across orbit, destroying thousands of tons of metal and killing the pride of the Crixol Navy. From his flagship, Rain watched the reports come in. His aide whispered, shocked, "Sir, this will cripple their production for years." Rain's eyes were cold. Good. Let them feel what helplessness tastes like. The Empire trembles. Across the Dominion, cracks widened. Rebellions spread like wildfire. Supply lines collapsed. Fleets went hungry. Armies began to desert. Soldiers too afraid to fight. An enemy they could not see. In their great palace of black stone, the Crixol Emperor shouted in fury, "Find this human! Crush him!" But no matter how many fleets they sent, no matter how many spies they hunted, Elias Rain remained untouchable. His task force vanished into the void after every strike, leaving nothing but ruin behind. Worse, the Crixol began to turn on each other. Governors accused generals of incompetence. Admirals accused each other of betrayal. Fear eroded their unity, and Rain quietly fed that fear with forged messages and planted evidence. The mighty empire, once solid as iron, was beginning to fracture. The quiet moment and a rare moment of rest, Rain stood alone in his quarters looking at the photo of his sister Mara. Her gentle smile stared back at him, frozen in time. "I promised you, Mara," he whispered. They would pay for what they did, not with one battle, not with one victory, but with the death of everything they built on cruelty. He closed the photo and returned to the war table. The plan was far from finished. The Empire was bleeding, but not yet dead. He would make sure. They bled until nothing was left. The fourth cut on the icy moon of Barthis, A secret prison held thousands of captives, rebels, dissenters, and even innocent civilians. Few ever escaped. But one night explosions rocked the prison walls. Human strike teams stormed inside, freeing thousands of prisoners. The guards were overwhelmed, not by numbers, but by shock. They had believed the prison unassailable. As the freed prisoners boarded human ships, one of them looked back at the burning fortress and shouted, "Rain!" The name echoed across the galaxy, the legend of Rain. By now, the Krixal could no longer deny it. Their empire was under attack, not from fleets, but from one man's mind. Soldiers whispered his name in fear. Citizens repeated it in hope. To some he was a demon, to others a savior. But to the Krixal Dominion he was a nightmare made flesh. The Krixal Dominion was no longer steady. Its colonies shook with rebellion, its fleets struggled to find food, and its leaders argued in fury. Yet the Emperor still believed in his empire's strength. "They are humans," he roared in his war council. "Weak creatures hiding in shadows. One fleet, one strike, and they will crawl back into their holes." So he gave the order. Destroy the human colonies. The great retaliation, dozens of Krixal fleets launched from their core worlds. Their warships stretched across the stars, black spears of iron and fire. Their target, human border colonies. Peaceful, worlds filled with farmers, engineers, and families. The plan was simple: strike fast, burn everything, leave nothing alive. The Emperor believed this would break human spirit, but Admiral Elias Rain had already predicted this move. From his flagship, he watched the enemy fleets spread like predators. On the star map before him, red lines marked their paths. He tapped, one with his finger. "They think they are hunters," Rain said, "but they are walking into traps." His officers leaned forward, waiting. "Each colony they target," Rain continued, "has already been evacuated. The civilians are safe. What the Krixal will find are empty worlds, and our teeth waiting for them." The first fleet arrived at the colony of Ardan Prime. The planet's green field stretched below, its cities strangely silent. The Krixal commander laughed. "They are cowards. They fled before us." He ordered his ships into orbit, preparing to bombard the cities. Then the mines exploded. From hidden craters on the moon, massive warheads launched upward, striking the Krixal fleet from below. Entire cruisers were torn apart in seconds. Before the survivors could respond, human warships uncloaked from the darkness of the asteroid belt. Plasma fire filled space. The Krixal tried to fight back, but the humans struck with perfect timing, every move predicted. In less than an hour, the once proud fleet was nothing but wreckage burning in orbit. On his flagship, Rain gave a single nod. One down. 3. Second trap, another fleet reached the colony of Dathist 4. They expected to find frightened humans. Instead, they found silence. Suddenly, the colony's power grid lit up, not with surrender signals, but with blinding pulses. Human hackers had turned the planet's satellites into weapons, sending out bursts of electromagnetic energy. Krixal ships lost power, their systems crashing. Before they could recover, human bombers dropped from orbit, striking helpless warships one by one. The Krixal commander screamed in rage, but his fleet died in silence. The third trap at the colony of Ceron, the Krixal landed troops on the surface, ready to slaughter farmers and burn homes. But when they reached the villages, they found not civilians, but armed militias, men and women who had been trained by Rain's forces. Every street became a battlefield, every barn a fortress. Farmers who once carried plows now carried rifles. And as the Krixal soldiers fell, the militia shouted a single name: "Rain! Rain!" The invaders tried to retreat, but human gunships cut off their escape. Another fleet was gone. The Empire's anger word of the defeats spread quickly. In the Krixal capital, the Emperor's rage shook the palace walls. 3 fleets destroyed, entire armies lost, he thundered. His generals lowered their heads in shame. "They knew our every move," one whispered. "It was as if they were waiting for us." The Emperor slammed his clawed hand on the table. "Then we will burn them at the core. No more colonies, no more borders. We march on their heart. Earth itself. The chamber fell silent. Even his bravest generals hesitated. Attacking Earth meant war not just with humans, but with every ally they had. But the Emperor cared nothing for caution. "We will crush them," he declared, "and the galaxy will see the price of defying the Dominion." Rain's plan on Titan. Station. Rain stood before his officers. The star map now showed the largest Krixal fleet ever assembled. It stretched across light years, a tide of warships heading straight for human space. His aide looked pale. "Sir, they are coming with everything." Rain nodded. "Good. That is what I wanted." The officers stared at him in shock. "You wanted this?" one asked. "Yes," Rain said calmly. "The Krixal believe overwhelming force is victory. They cannot imagine that too much strength can also be a weakness. By bringing their entire fleet, they leave their empire undefended, and when their fleets are gone, their core will burn." The room fell silent as they realized the truth. This was not just defense. This was a trap on the scale of empires. The decisive battle. The Krixal fleet entered human space like a black storm. Thousands of warships blotted out the stars. Their cannons glowed with deadly fire, their commanders confident of easy victory. But Rain was waiting. From hidden positions around binary stars, from asteroid belts, from cloaked bases, the human fleet appeared. Smaller, faster, and perfectly placed. "Target their supply ships first," Rain ordered. In the first minutes, fuel carriers and food freighters erupted into flames. The mighty Krixal fleet suddenly found itself without supplies, its long journey turning into a trap of starvation. Then, Rain's second order came. "Now cut them apart." Human ships split the enemy armada into fragments, isolating groups of warships and striking them with overwhelming precision. Every Krixal counterattack was predicted, every retreat blocked. It was as if Rain saw the future itself. The battle raged for days, fire and wreckage lighting the void. Human losses were heavy, but the Krixal losses were worse. For every human ship destroyed, 5 Krixal ships fell, and through it all, Rain stood calm, his eyes fixed on the map. "Tighten the noose," he murmured. "Do not let them escape." Rebellions in the core. While the battle raged at the border, news reached the Krixal homeworld. Rebellions had exploded across their empire. Velarin, Barthis, Dravon, all the worlds that had once bowed in fear now rose in open defiance. Weapons. Provided by Rain armed millions. Rebel fleets struck shipyards and garrisons. Entire planets declared independence, their people shouting in joy as Krixal flags burned. The Dominion was collapsing from both ends. The Emperor's desperation on his flagship. The Krixal Emperor received the reports. His armies crushed. His colonies lost, his empire burning. He slammed his fists against the command throne. "How? How can humans do this? We are stronger. We are countless. How can they destroy us?" But no answer came. In truth, the Emperor had already lost. He had fought wars of strength. Rain was fighting a war of minds. And in that war, the Krixal had no chance. The fire in the core. Finally, the Emperor gave the order to retreat. His once proud fleet scattered, broken and starving. But it was too late. Human ships followed them into their own territory. Rebels rose across their core worlds. Even the Emperor's palace trembled as citizens rioted in the streets. For the first time in history, the heart of the Krixal Dominion was on fire. Rain's victory. From his flagship, Admiral Rain watched the collapse unfold. Reports streamed in. Fleets destroyed, colonies freed, rebellions growing. The Empire was not only defeated, it was unraveling. His aide whispered, awed, "Sir, you've done it. You've brought them to their knees." Rain's eyes were hard. "Not yet. Empires do not die in battle. They die when their people no longer believe. And soon, the Krixal will no longer believe in their own strength." He turned away from the burning map. Then, and only then, will we have victory. The Krixal had mocked humanity's mercy. They had attacked a ship of healers. Now, their Fleets lay in ruins, their empire burned, and their people whispered one name with fear: Rain. The fire in the core had begun, and it would not stop until the Dominion was nothing but ash. The galaxy had never seen such chaos. The Crixall Dominion, once feared for its fleets, armies, and ruthless rule, was collapsing. Their colonies were free, their fleets destroyed, their soldiers scattered. Rebellion spread like wildfire, fueled by weapons, hope, and the whisper of one name: Elias Rain. And yet, the Crixall Emperor still clung to his throne, desperate, blind, and furious. The final stand. The Emperor gathered what remained of his forces on the planet Jaroth, a central world in the Dominion. Its mountains were jagged, its skies red with pollution, but it had one advantage: natural fortifications and loyal troops. "We will hold this world," the Emperor declared, his voice echoing in the throne room. "Even if humanity takes everything else, Jaroth will stand." Rain knew the importance of Jaroth, not just as a strategic point, but as a symbol. If the Emperor survived, the Crixall might regroup. If he fell, the Empire would die. Task Force. Retribution approached the system quietly. Human ships hid behind the gas giant's storms, waiting. Rain stood on the bridge of his flagship, eyes cold as the stars. "Prepare the fleet, but remember," he said, "we do not fight to kill. We fight to end. Leave no escape for their pride." The siege begins. The humans struck at dawn. Rain's fleet descended from the gas giant's storms, appearing like phantoms from nowhere. Crixall warships scrambled to defend Jaroth, but they were already too few, too disorganized, and too afraid. Missile barrages and plasma cannons filled space, but the human fleet was faster, more precise. Supply ships were destroyed first, leaving the Crixall forces stranded without fuel or munitions. On the surface, human special forces landed, disabling planetary defenses, cutting power to military installations, and liberating forced labor camps. Civilians cheered from hidden shelters as their oppressors fell one by one. The Emperor watched from his fortress, fury in his eyes. "They cannot take Jaroth. My empire will not fall." But the fortress was already surrounded. The Emperor's, mistaken his desperation, the Emperor sent his most elite guard to break the human lines. They were fast, ruthless, and trained for centuries. But Rain had anticipated this. Human forces had prepared ambushes, traps, and decoys. The elite guard was lured into narrow valleys where explosives detonated, collapsing cliffs onto their formations. Survivors were cut off and captured. For the first time, the Emperor realized he had been outmaneuvered. The humans did not rely on brute strength. They used strategy, patience, and understanding of human and alien psychology. He roared in disbelief. "No, I am the ruler of the Dominion, I cannot fail." But the humans were already inside his walls. The fall of the Emperor Rain himself led the final strike. He walked through the fortress with his team, silent and precise. Soldiers surrendered at the sight of him, too afraid to fight. Word of his presence spread through the Crixall ranks, panic taking hold. Finally, Rain confronted the Emperor in the grand throne room. The creature towered over him, claws ready, eyes filled with rage. "You killed my sister," Rain said softly. "You destroyed the Mercy Dawn. You mocked our mercy. And now, you see what humans are capable of." The Emperor lunged, but Rain anticipated every move. In a swift sequence, the guard surrendered. The Emperor was trapped, and his throne became a cage. The mighty ruler of the Crixall Dominion was defeated, not by numbers, but by human resolve, intellect, and strategy. The collapse of the Empire. With the Emperor captured, the news spread instantly across the Dominion. Ships fled in confusion. Governors abandoned their posts. Colonies declared independence. Alien races who had once been enslaved rose in celebration, armed and ready. Human fleets moved systematically, taking control of key systems. Rain did not seek to annex Crixall worlds. Humanity did not conquer. They simply ensured the empire could not rise again. By the time the last battle was fought, the Krixall dominion existed only in memory, a shadow of its former power. Reigns. Addressed to the galaxy from Titan Station, Elias Rain broadcast his message. Millions across the galaxy watched and listened. "You attacked a ship of mercy," he said, voice calm but firm. "You thought our kindness was weakness. You mocked what we hold most sacred, life, compassion, healing. But humanity is not weak. Our strength is not just in weapons or ships. It is in our hearts, our minds, and our will to protect what is right. You wanted to crush us. You wanted to see us bow. But you forgot one thing. When humans fight for justice, for life, and for each other, we do not yield. The Krixall Empire is no more. Its fleets are destroyed, its colonies free, its people scattered. And let this be known. Mercy will always triumph over cruelty and intelligence over arrogance." Across the galaxy, the message spread hope. Former slaves cheered, free colonies celebrated. Even humans who had lost so much felt pride in their species' courage. The cost of victory. Though the war was over, the cost was heavy. Thousands of human soldiers had died. Many lives lost in the border colonies could not be saved. But Rain walked among the survivors, speaking to them quietly, offering reassurance and hope. "Every life we protect," he said, "is proof that what we fight for is worth it. We cannot bring back those we lost, but we honor them by ensuring no one suffers like that again." He met with rebel leaders on former Krixall worlds. They offered alliances, help in rebuilding, and gratitude. Rain accepted none of the territory. Humanity's goal had never been conquest. It had been justice, mercy, and survival. A legacy remembered. Years later, historians wrote of the war. Children learned the story of the Mercy Dawn, the human hospital, ship destroyed by cruelty, and the man who made an entire empire pay for its arrogance. Elias Rain's name became legend, whispered in fear among the remnants of the Krixall, and in hope among those who had been freed. Humans had shown the galaxy that kindness is a strength, intelligence is a weapon, and one person's resolve can topple an empire. And though wars would come again and threats would rise, the story of Rain and the burning empire served as a reminder: never underestimate humanity. The final scene, in the silent void of space, Rain stood on the deck of his flagship, looking at the stars. They had been witnesses to destruction, to victory, and to the resilience of his people. A young officer approached. "Admiral, what now?" Rain smiled faintly. "Now, we heal. We rebuild. We remind the galaxy that humans fight not for power, but for life. And anyone who dares attack mercy will learn the same lesson the Krixall did." Above, the stars shimmered like quiet witnesses. The galaxy had changed forever, and humanity had proven that even in the darkest hour, they could shine the brightest.